on Zacchaeus, but here it is. Everywhere Jesus went, he had purpose. If you walk the pages of the New Testament, or Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, if you walk it, everywhere he went was for a purpose. I mean, you remember, was it the woman at the well that in Samaria that that had an encounter with Jesus? Am I thinking? Help me out on the. So she has this encounter with Jesus, and she has this life conversion, and she goes back into her city and wins the whole city to the Lord. Okay? Now here's the thing. Everywhere Jesus went, there was purpose. Because when you read right up before that, you read where the scripture says this. And this is how King James Version says it. It says, he had needs to go to Samaria. Now he sent the group on, here's where you're going, but I've got to go. I've got to go to Samaria. Now, when you look at the map, it wasn't like, hey, we're going to stop at Buc-ee's along the way. It was an out-of-the-way experience. Why? Because everywhere he went had purpose. And everybody that Jesus came in contact with changed. Something in their life changed. And the other thing is everywhere he went had purpose. Everybody that he come in contact with changed in some way. And then everybody that changed the lives of those around them. So those are just out of everything, just the three, just forefront thoughts, just to keep them in mind. Now, in Luke chapter 19, and starting to read with verse 1, if I can find my glasses. Make sure they're not sitting on my head. That really makes you look old if you're doing that. All right, Luke chapter 19, the story of Zacchaeus. It says then, verse 1, then Jesus entered and passed through Jericho. Now behold, there was a man named Zacchaeus who was a chief tax collector. Everybody go boo-boo. No, the chief tax collector, and he was rich. Okay, now watch this. Verse 3, and he sought to see who Jesus was, but could not because of the crowd, for he was short stature. He was a wee little man. Verse 4, so he ran ahead and climbed up in the sycamore tree to see him, for he was going to pass that way. And when Jesus came to the place, he looked up and saw him and said to him, Zacchaeus, make haste and come down, for today, watch this. This is just how everywhere Jesus went was purpose. He said, watch how he says it. For today, I must stay at your house. Now, I'm just telling you, if I brought a stranger home, I want you to kind of picture this. If I came home and I said, Melly, this guy named Zach, we'll do Zach, cut it for short, good, and I met this guy today, and he's going to stay with us. Well, what do you know about him? Well, he's the tax collector. Nobody likes him. But when I just walked by, I just felt that we should. Now, she may not be as excited about it as I'd be nervous about it. We helped somebody a while back, and that was stranded here, and we're talking on the phone, and their kids are from another state, and Melanie's talking to them, and that everybody's good and everybody's fine, and this is what I wasn't ready for. They said, just go home with those pastors. Well, we met this lady an hour ago. I mean, I'm going to have to hear God. But here's what he did. He said, I must stay at your house. So he got down, and the word says Zacchaeus received him joyfully. Okay? So here he's just wanting to see this man named Jesus. Now, but Jesus saw him. Zacchaeus' life-changing experience, his life-changing experience was so life-changing that you remember where we read it says, and he was a rich man. He had such a life-changing experience that the word goes on and tells you that he took half of his riches and gave them. Half of them. And listen, this is the one, I mean, half of it, okay, all right, okay, God, you have so changed my life, yes. And then the word goes on to say, and those that he had cheated over the years, he gave back 4 times what he had cheated them out of. Now that is a transformation, that's a conversion. I mean, and there's a lot of things, but now something has gone on in somebody's life when you take half of everything you own and give it to the poor. And then everyone that you've ever cheated, you don't just go back and make it right, but here, I'm going to make it right, and I'm going to give you back 4 times what I cheated you out of. Listen, that is awkward conversation to have. I mean, just showing up and saying, hey, Mike, I should have done a little better of this, but I'm going to pay you back because I want to do the right thing, but I'm not just going to give you your $20 back. I'm going to give you 4 times that. Yeah, look here, Richie's happy about that. But listen, in verse 9, watch this. Verse 9 says this. You'll read these words. Zacchaeus, Jesus looks at him and says, Zacchaeus, salvation has come to your house today. Salvation has come to your house today. Is it because he gave half of his money to the poor? No. Is it because he made everything right and paid 4 times more? No. It's because salvation came to his house because there was a heart change. See, we go back to, we've been talking about it on Sunday mornings for several weeks, but it really does come down to it's all about the heart. Out of the heart flow the issues of life. So what is my heart posture? What is my heart attitude? And that's what changed in his life, Zacchaeus, is his heart posture. His salvation came not because of what he did, but because of who he experienced, which was Jesus. The Bible says in Mark chapter 9 and verse 16, it was while Jesus, you know this one, while Jesus was passing along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and Andrew, and the word says they were casting their nets. They had been, fishing, and the story where Jesus says, hey, drop your nets and follow me. And Simon and Andrew were just doing what they did. They were just doing what they did. And Jesus saw them, just like he saw Zacchaeus. He saw them. They were doing their routine, everyday thing. They were at work, and they were doing that thing. And while they're casting the nets, while they're working, the word says Jesus saw them. If it was written today, and I wrote it, and it was in today's language, I could say it this way. While they were shopping at Market Basket and being faithful to just, being encouraged to everybody, Jesus saw them. I don't do things just so that, God will see me. But while I am doing things, I need to remember that God sees me. It's like, and I'm so thankful that I don't think I've ever experienced this, but but I also give warning if I come. There's something about the pastors just cold turkey showing up at your house makes some people sweat. And I don't understand why. Uh, but, you know, I've never had the experience, but I've had pastors tell me the experience of when they just showed up, knocked on the door, and it was like nobody was home. All the cars are out front, all the lights are on, the TV's on, you can smell, but there ain't nobody coming to this door. Or you can hear everybody rushing around and saying, pick that up, put that in here. Here, the preacher's here, the preacher's here. I heard an old story years ago, and it said that in the small community, the preacher showed up at somebody's house, and this is really going to tell my age now because I don't even think they're in business anymore. But said the preacher showed up at somebody's house, and they're visiting, and they're trying to make a good impression on the preacher that just showed up to invite them to church and all this. And finally, the lady said, son, talk to the little boy, son, go in my bedroom and get that book that Mama reads every day. And she meant the Bible, that big old family Bible she had in there. He come back with the Sears catalog. Now, if you don't know who Sears is, it's because you hadn't been around long enough. But while they were doing and while they were being faithful with what they had, Jesus saw them. Look, if I started going while you're welding and while you're doing what you do every day, Jesus sees you. While you do it, Roy, every day when you're in there, let's see if I remember right, lighting pilot lights, and is that you? Close. While you're in there playing with fire. Okay, he says sure on that one. But and then you come across that person that you can speak encouragement to. And we walk away and we don't look at it just so we can get the pat on the back. But we do it because we knew and we felt that's what God was giving us to do. And when I walk away, I'm not doing it for this reason, but I think I need to realize that just as Jesus had purpose for his life, I have purpose for my life. And so I'm faithful, and as I'm doing that, Jesus sees me. Whatever you're doing and whatever, wherever we go in life, Jesus sees us. And that's important because you can feel like a nobody. You can feel like nobody sees you. But even when you feel like that, Jesus sees you. I'm going to tell you my story. I hadn't told this one. I really wish y'all number these stories just to see how challenged it is. It's true. This is a personal life experience. Melly and I were pastoring our first church in Houston. There was 12 people when we arrived at the church. I was finishing seminary where we got a family, small kids. I didn't make a whole lot of money, but could get off early to go fishing. So that was the plus, with the job, is I could get everything and go fishing. And then we're pastoring this small church it cost us more. The church was only able to give us, I think, a couple $100 a week to try to help us. It cost us on average, because we had to get sitters for kids and all this, it cost us on average $300 to $400 a week to pastor the church. And that's that wasn't, I'm not going, that's in lieu of my tithe. No, I'm telling you, we tithe, and because we're going to put God first. We tithe, and then we did whatever needed, and God always supplied. But I hit a spot that it was just a low spot. I know you guys never hit a low spot, but it was a low spot for me. And I go up to the church. I'd gotten off early and nobody had invited me fishing, so I went to the church. That's not how the story, but that's probably pretty close to it. So I go to the church. And I'm sitting in this empty church in this office. It was a nice office. It was a big office. And I'm sitting in this office, and it's so removed at that time in the woods, and you couldn't hear anything. And I'm sitting in this church by myself, and I begin to feel so alone. And sitting at that desk that day, I remember, and I don't know if you've ever been to this spot, and I said it out loud. I was the only one there. It was just me. I said, God, do you even know where I'm at? Have you ever felt that? God, do you even know where I'm at? And a few weeks went by, and I was back up at the church again. And I was by myself, and the church phone rang, which was a surprise. Nobody called, because nobody was there during the day. The church rang, the phone rang. I picked it up, said hello, and on the other end of the phone, this was the conversation. They said, "Is this Pastor Griffin?" I said, "Yes, it is." They said, "Look, brother, I don't want to make this I don't want to add or take away from anything from what I'm about to say. I'm not going to make this overly spiritual. Here's how I found your name is, first of all, I was in prayer one morning and God told me your name. And I started praying for you a couple of weeks ago. That was about the time I said, God, do you even know where I'm at? He said, I started praying for you just in my prayer time. God just dropped your name. And then the more I prayed for you every day, I started, I knew you were from Texas. And so I started. He said, so, I said, this is why he said, I'm telling you this because I don't want you to put any more or anything. And he's trying to explain all this. And I said, well, I said, brother, just say it. I don't even know this guy. He said 2 weeks ago, he told me that. And he said, and remember what I asked? I said, God, do you even know where I'm at? And this guy, a stranger, he said, here's how I found your number. He said, I knew that you were a minister somewhere. And then when God showed me in Texas, he said, I logged in and found out, hey, does this guy's name match anybody that's pastoring, and so it did. In Texas at that time. And he said, so it did. He said, that's how I got your number. He said, but here's what I'm called to tell you. He said, I've told you all of this to tell you this. Is a couple of weeks ago when God gave me your name, he said, and I started praying for you before I even knew you. He said, I also heard the Lord say, you call him and you tell him this, that I always know where he's at. Now, the interesting thing about that is I live in Houston, Texas, and that guy lived in California, and we have never met. Somebody can say, well, that God can't do that. Listen, I'm gonna tell you something else. I wrote a card. We had somebody get upset. I don't even know what they was upset about. Where this is in Houston, they get upset and they leave the church. We don't even know, to this day, we don't even know what they were upset about. People get upset about stuff. They were upset. And we didn't even, they left the church, but we didn't even know they left the church because their attendance didn't change much from what it was already doing. So it was kind of hard to figure that out. But one Sunday, the wife came up to Melanie after church, and I was standing there, and she's got tears running down her face, and this is an older couple. She's got tears running down her face, and she said, we had left the church. She's talking to Melanie, and I'm overhearing this. We left the church, and Melanie, she said, "Oh, we didn't know that." I mean, you're here this morning. She didn't say any of that, but I mean, you kind of walking through it, and I'm listening. And she said, yes. She said, our whole marriage, and they'd been married 100 years. I don't know. She said, my whole marriage, I've never seen my husband cry, not one tear. She said, and I'm over here and talking and listening over here. And she tells Melanie, she said, it was that card your husband wrote to my husband, a card, note card. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. Now, Melanie's helped me do stuff in ministry our whole marriage. So we get out in the car to leave and go home, and before we could even get the car started, she said, my gosh, what did you write in that card? I said, Melanie, I was going to ask you the same thing. And she said, what do you mean? You didn't write a card? I said, no, listen, I heard everything. I thought you had wrote a card. She said, I wrote nothing. And, but God knew right where he was. And I had somebody one time say, well, God can't do that. No, but God can move on you to do it, Hannah, hey, you need to write a card. And it wasn't just a card. Whatever it said what it said, and it was signed by me. I am telling you to this day, I've never wrote a card to that guy a day in my life. But God knew where he was. God knew where he was. And so when I asked the question, God, do you even know where I'm at? Listen, I need to know that he sees me. The community saw Zacchaeus as really as a bad man, a sinner. They saw him as a sinner. He's gone home to be with the Lord now, but we I don't know how many years ago, but we had somebody start coming to this church, and we're still learning people's names and everything. And he used to sit right over here in this section. But he started coming, and he was a little rough. You knew he was rough. And he's coming every week, and he's rough, but he's just coming to church. He sat down during worship. I don't know that I ever got a peep, an amen of that's a good sermon, that's a bad sermon, nothing. No, nothing. But he was faithful, and he came every week. And it was a Sunday night, a special Sunday night service we had, and there were a lot of people up here. We remember we had a guest speaker. There was a lot of people up here that the guest was praying over. And Melanie, God tapped Melanie on the shoulder, and she looked up, and she said he was sitting right over here in this section by himself. And she said he looked up, and tears were coming down his cheek. So Melanie just kind of went over there and sat down next to him and said, hey, and talked with him for a few minutes. And within a couple of minutes was able to lead him to the Lord. And God really started changing his life. We had somebody call us one day, and they said, hey, is this guy going to y'all's church? And we said, yes. They said, well, you know who you've got. And I said, no, who do we have? He said, you got one of the meanest men in this community. We said, well, he sure is nice to us. And they said, something's happened to him. Something's happened to him. But listen, what is it? It's a heart change. So he may have been known as a bad guy, but after Jesus came to his house, after Jesus saw him, he has this encounter with God, with the Lord, he comes to his house and his whole life changed. And then it's the next talk of the community. In Hebrew, the meaning of if you look up Zacchaeus, the name, what does Zacchaeus mean? What does that name means? It means clear and pure. Can I talk to you about names real quick? Help me. Justin, I can do two of them. Justin, his name by definition, if you look it up and do a little reference, his name means full of justice. And that's how Justin is. I owe Taylor an apology because we named Sarah Sarah. You know what the name Sarah means? Princess. And I want you to see how important names are. So that means every time that I say, even when I was getting on to him, Justin, really what I was saying is full of justice. Put that down. Don't do that. Even when I was saying, Sarah, did you hear what Daddy said? You know what I was saying? Hey, princess, did you hear me? Because that's what happened. Is there that name? And so you think about it, when he was a bad person or a bad guy, God already sees him or sees us or you and I of how we are or how we would become. So while people were saying that Zacchaeus is he's a bad guy, bad dude. His name, every time somebody says that's Zacchaeus, they may have been saying it with disdain and a bad taste in their mouth. But you know what they're declaring every time they say it his name? Hey, that's Zacchaeus. They might as well just cross that out and say, hey, that's clean and that's pure. It's where God sees us. The community knew Zacchaeus by what he did. Jesus saw him by what he could become. Simon and Andrew just saw themselves good at what they did and what they do but Jesus saw more than they could see within themselves. And that's where we look at what we do every day. I could look at it and say, well, I just kind of start moving through the room. I can go look at Michael, and Michael could say, well, I don't make a kingdom impact. I'm just a welder. Roy could say, I don't have the giftings that everybody else does. I'm just a pilot lighter. I don't know what I still haven't figured out to this day. He tells me and I act like I know what he's talking about. I still haven't figured out what Samuel Allen does. I mean, the closest I've ever come to knowing what he's done is when you went through that season and you was cutting trees down. That was pretty self-explanatory to me. Now he's, goes everywhere, and I'm pretty sure it's legal, but I don't know what he does. But you start going, you start going through it. I can look at Lance. Lance, I know what you do on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, all day long. And you can look at your life and say, man, all I am is the garbage collector. Or you can look at the same thing and start your day off saying, God, is there somebody today that, help me be sensitive today? I'm going to get on to you in front of the whole church right now because I just realized something. You have not sent me or the group of guys a Monday text in a long time. Okay, it made me think of that. Now, every Monday morning, we went for a long time and then you just quit. So now it's time to get back. But he sent us, a group of us guys, he sent us an encouraging text every Monday morning at some point, and then he would say, hey, let's have a great week. Now, I don't know if he's trying to get me to come help pick up garbage or not, but I wasn't feeling it, and I was fixing to say it, I wasn't doing it, but sure enough, as I say, I'm not doing that, is God will say, hey, listen, you need to join Lance on this week and have an attitude adjustment. So I'd prefer not to, but I'll do what. Listen, what is God doing? He's calling us to make a difference in our generation. No, I can, Lord, I'll go where you want me to go. I'll do what you want me to do. But am I just being faithful with where you have me right now? Am I just being faithful here? I've shared the story of the pastor that told me, he said, I had something interesting. And I've just recently shared this one, but he said, I had a guy come to me and say, hey, I really feel God's calling me into the ministry, in the missions specifically. And he said, we've been praying with him about missions and everything. And then he said, the next thing I know, he comes up and he starts talking to me about how because he stands for Christianity, how basically in modern age he's being persecuted for his faith at work, and people are talking about him and all, and then he starts talking about, then he comes and meets with the pastor again, and he's telling about how these are the most ungodly people that he's ever been around. And he just starts telling this pastor about all this. Friend of mine, he's telling him how ungodly these people are. These people need Jesus. God's called me to missions, and I just want out of there. And I think God gave the pastor great wisdom. The pastor looked at him and said, wow. And he told him two things that day. He said, number one, he didn't do it number one, but these are the two things he told him. He said, man, you are in the biggest mission field of anybody that we support right now in the church in missions. Because it was a large company in Houston. It was big. They had, 1,000 or so employees. So every day, he said, you have more of an influence than some of our missionaries on the field. And then he said, and on the subject of you feel like you're being persecuted, he said, all I could think of that I'm going to say to you is nobody in the scope of history or time has ever suffered for the gospel like you are. And all that was happening was people were talking, everybody's not going to like us. Everybody's not going to like you. They're going to like me. No, that's not true. But God uses us where we are and where we're headed. So it was a life-changing experience that just changed everybody. It didn't only change his life, it changed his family's life and made a difference with the people that he worked with, that he was around. It was notable enough. The change was that we read about it. Somewhere life has to become more. Somewhere life has to become more than just accumulating things. Melanie, now we're I guess if you want to say it, we're in the last half of our life. I don't know. I don't know how Melanie's going to look at 110, but she'll look good. You're going to look wonderful at 110. Yeah. So I don't know how that's going to look, but Melanie said one day, she said, we spend the first half of our life trying to accumulate things, and we spend the last half trying to get rid of it. We come up this year for Christmas and birthdays, and this was the discussion at our house. What do you want for Christmas? What do you want for your birthday? Oh, nothing. What do you want? So I don't know. we just kind of hit the spot. There's no kids. If we want it, we go get it. You know, those of you that are raising your kids, it's a great spot to be. I'll tell anybody this. When your kids are no longer receiving funds from you, you're going to be a millionaire. So just hold on to it and keep. I think I should come over here to the Allens and say, y'all are going to have to work a little longer than other people do. But listen, somewhere life has to become more than spending all my time working to accumulate things so that I can retire and sit on the front porch and rock till I die. Life has got to be more than that. But it has to become and be a Galatians 2:20 experience where the word says, where no longer I live. No longer am I living just for me and what I want, but the life I now live, I live by faith of the Son of God who loves me. You know why? You can love unlovable people. You know why? Because there were times that you and I were unlovable, and he still loved us. The word says, while we were yet in our trespasses and sin, while I was a sinner, he still loved me. I want my life to count for something because Jesus did a whole lot to change my life. So I'm not looking for always somebody else to get the job done or raise somebody else up to do it. Is God, if you speak it to me, I want to be obedient to what you say. Matthew and I have been talking the last few weeks, and he asked me, and I wrote a sticky note because he come up and he said, this is the question Matthew asked me in December, I think it was. And it was right during the holidays, and I wrote it down. I said, hey, we'll talk about this at the first of the year. And he's waiting for some deep theological discussion. And here was the question he asked. He asked me to pray. He said, I want you to be praying with me. And this is a valid, prayer. But I want you to be praying with me that when I hear the Lord, I would just be bold and just do what he says. Okay, I can pray that. So I'd forgot. He came to me in somewhere about January and said, hey, we're supposed to have a, talk. I said, I know. I didn't know what it was because I couldn't find the sticky note. That's just, and just a few weeks ago, I said, hey, Matthew, I'm ready to talk to you. Well, it's the reason because I went through the pile on my desk and found the sticky note. And I said, and so we, went back to, hey, will you pray with me about this? And I said, all right. He said, now I know you're going to hit me with something big. I said, yes. I said, here's how you experience boldness. It's when God speaks to you, you're willing to take the chance to miss it. Come on, give me the deep stuff. That's pretty deep. That when God speaks, that you take the step. That's how you get, you get bold. There's moments that I can look at somebody and I'm moved with compassion. Jesus looked and saw the multitudes, and we see, the feeding of the 5,000. The word says that Jesus saw the multitudes and was moved with compassion. There are some things that I do because I have, there's compassion that flows that way. But there are some things that I do because I know that I heard God. And do you know why I'm able to do them? And I still miss it. But the reason I'm able, and I'm a whole lot better today than I was when I started this journey, because I've been willing to step out. And there's a whole lot of things along the way, but I was willing to step out. And you guys know I'll go out of my way. I don't want to be known as the goofy, flaky, person, overly, so spiritual, on everything. I just want to be real of who Jesus is in my life, and I want to be real in other people's life. And so I've always had a tendency to just kind of, I don't want to make, I'm not a walk up to you. I say that. I got to watch how I say this, or God's going to send me to school again this week. I'm not somebody that's going to walk up and say, oh, I tell you, thus saith the Lord. Now if God gives me a thus saith the Lord, I have no problem doing it, but I'm going to make sure it's God, not me. I feel the excitement in the room, that it's God, that I'm not just, because somebody called me and said, hey, if you run into so-and-so, this is what's going on in their life. I don't want to be that person that gets up because I already know about it, to walk up and say, oh man, this is really God that we run into each other. And not tell that I've had 3 people call and then, thus saith the Lord. If it's going to be a thus saith the Lord, it needs to be a thus saith the Lord. And so I've kind of go, I don't want to make anything overly spiritual, because I think we can all have that tendency and we can all experience this thing, is where we know where God stopped, but we kept going. Is that just me? Look, I've got people that were bold enough to raise their hand on that. That we know that we hear the Holy Spirit saying, don't say it, don't say it, don't say it. And it may even be true. But I've got to do, God knows more than I do. If you're thinking right now, Pastor, I could have told you that before you started tonight. Listen, He knows more than you do too. He knows the details of our life. So my life has to be His. So I'm not looking to just do what it takes to get by. God, you have changed my life and my family. You've done so much in our lives. God, if there's anywhere you can use me, use me. Some of my greatest, I'm going to get spiritual terms for just a moment. Some of my greatest spiritual moments that I knew God used me and made a difference in somebody's life. And I knew that it was an appointment that God, a stranger, but you just walk away from it knowing that, man, this was all God. I will tell you that some of the greatest stories that I have did not happen in the altars of the church, but they happened while I was pumping gas. And God said, look, that person right there. I was at the grocery store, and He said, this person right here. Listen, the only thing that has changed in my life at getting it is gotten a little bit bolder. And I have no problem telling you this, is if somebody comes up to me in public, I don't care where it is, and says, hey, will you be praying with me about this? We're going to pray right now. I don't care. I'm not going to be loud. I'm not going to, be weird or anything like that, but I'm going to pray right then. And that is only because how many times do we just tell somebody, oh, well, we're going to be praying with you, and we never think about it again. And then I'm finding out, I found out as I get older, is about the time I think about it again, it's already over. So I've gotten to where, and I'm just going to pray with you right where we are. Hey, let's step over here. I want to pray with you real quick about that. And then, as God brings it up. But what did I have to do? I had to learn to be bold. But it all started because I had an encounter with Jesus. My personality is not Melanie's personality. I've told you, I like to just blend in the room. Melanie wanted to, and it's not a bad thing. It's just her personality. Everybody knows when she walks into the room. We've got, 3 kids, and somehow they all went after her personality. And think about, y'all should pray for me. When we go out to dinner or something, even when it was just the 5 of us and they're teenagers, listen, There was nobody that could get embarrassed by their family any quicker than I could. You know, I mean, they were loud. They were, and everybody's watching us. Everybody in the restaurant. But you know what? As I learned, as we got older and we're raising our kids, because people started coming up to the table. Strangers would come up to the table and they would say, "Hey, we just want you to know that you blessed us tonight." And we're thinking, we just came here to eat. We hadn't. You blessed us tonight. We saw you and your family sit down. And y'all prayed. And it really did something within me. You say, well, man, that's nothing. That's just what we... No, I'm telling you, just be who you are and who God's made you to be. And just get bold about it. I'm not telling you to be crazy. If you want to be crazy about it, you can be crazy about it. But just be bold at what God's gives you to do. But in being bold, you're going to have to take a chance. You say, what's that? I might be wrong sometime. Here's the last thing. I'm going to stop right here. My relationship with God, with the Lord, has to be more than I don't want to go to hell. My relationship with God has got to be more. Now, I don't want, if we just started splitting, some of you older people will remember E.V. Hill from Dr. E.V. Hill was on Trinity Broadcasting for years, and he was a pastor of a missionary Baptist church, very large, successful missionary Baptist church in Los Angeles. One of the greatest sermons that the man is still remembered for today is he preached 4 reasons. I mean, it was his church ran a few thousand there in Los Angeles when churches didn't get over 300 people. He had thousands. Here's what he preached. Most notable, if you talk to anybody long enough that knows who E.V. Hill was, will say, "Man, did you ever hear him preach on hell?" Now, it wasn't dangle you over the hell. Here's what he did. I can only remember the first 2 because I just couldn't believe this guy's going to give us this wisdom. He said, "I need everybody in here to write number 1 through 4, and I'm going to give everybody in this church 4 reasons why you don't want to go to hell." And I'm thinking this is going to be deep. It's going to be one of them deep conversations. Number 1. He said, "Are y'all ready? Number 1, here's the first reason why you don't want to go to hell." He said, "Because it is not like I'll try it out for the weekend, and if it don't work, then I'll just go back to doing something." He said, "So write this down. Number 1, there are no exits in hell." That was the depth of, it was a great, powerful sermon. Number 2, he said, everybody write this down. Number 2, he said, the reason I don't want to go to hell is because it's hot in hell. And but it was just you could meet right where he was. And I'm telling you, they say more people came to know the Lord that night. See, I think sometimes we try to make it, I know we do, make it much harder than it is. What do? We just need to be who God called us to be and just be real. And I'm really out of time, so I'd like you to stand and I just want to pray over you tonight. Come on, Matthew, get that mic. Where's that microphone at? Turn all that. Give this mic on. Okay, look here. Don't be doing that. You don't do that. You push this right here.
Okay, got you.
You're hot now. Okay, now don't go up there and start preaching. I just want to stretch you a little bit.
Okay.
And I want you to pray over everybody before we leave tonight.
Okay.
And then you can help me next week. Okay.
Father, I just thank you for this opportunity for us to come into your house, God, and worship you and receive your word, Father. Father, I pray this week that everyone would continue their week being the light in the darkness, God, because we are the salt of the earth. Father, I pray that you would give us the boldness and the courage to spread your love, Father, that you would renew our minds and we would soften our hearts for you, Father, and allow you to be in control of every aspect of our life, God. Father, we thank you for everything that you do for us, even though we're not worthy. God, we praise you and we thank you for everything. And in Jesus' name, we love you. Amen.
Amen. Have a great rest of your week.